Welcome everybody to today's presentation. This presentation brought to you in conjunction with the Dynamics user group and also MS Dynamics World is talking about a way to learn Dynamics and in a fun way and hopefully in a more interesting way than the traditional methods. And that's by going out and implementing Dynamics from scratch. And in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to implement a version of a Dungeons and Dragons scenario inside of Dynamics. And as my grandmother used to say, if you can implement Dynamics 365 with Dungeons and Dragons, then you can implement anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through this, and I'm going to show you some of the examples that I've got with this implementation or this example that I set up, and hopefully it'll be interesting for you all. Now, throughout the session, what we're going to do is we're going to sort of stretch the way that you can think about dynamics. And I find that this is a more interesting way to learn dynamics because you're not constrained by the standards or the a real world example. You can really do anything that you want. We're not really too worried about taxation, and we're not too worried about a lot of the finer details that you'd have within a real world implementation. We're just trying to learn the mechanics and the backbones of this. And whether you're a seasoned consultant or trying to learn dynamics, then this is probably an interesting way to work through all of the setup of dynamics and get a better understanding of the mechanisms that are built in there. And just to give you a little bit of background, my name's Murray Fife. If you haven't met me before, I've been working with Dynamics for the past 15 years, I think, and before that I worked with ERP for more years prior to that. And you can find me on LinkedIn and you can email me at any time. But I'm open to any suggestions, and also if anyone has any additional information that maybe they think can help this project, then contact me. I'm open to that. So before we start, the main premise of this presentation is what's the best way to learn dynamics? And I think personally that the current way that people are learning is a little bit flawed or a little bit boring, to be honest. There's a lot of training information out there for Dynamics 365, but it's very piecemeal. It's very accurate, but again, it's very piecemeal in the system. So I've found over the years I've worked with Dynamics, the best way to learn the system is really to start from the ground up, not start with a demo system like Contoso Entertainment and then go out and set up a customer and so forth, because you're missing all of the mechanics that are built into this. So the best way to implement this is to learn Dynamics is to start from the ground up, learn how you set up the ledgers, learn how you set up currencies, learn what journals really are within the system. Now, how do you make this interesting, or how do you work through this process? And for me, I found that I want to have a context. I want to have a purpose for my demonstration system that I'm setting up. Whether this is going out and using your own organization as an example, or going out and doing what we're going to do here in a fun way and use Dungeons and Dragons, it's entirely up to you. But the concept is the same. But for me, what I'm going to do in this example is I'm going to have some fun, and we're going to use Dungeons and Dragons, and then that uncovers some other things that we've got here inside of the system. So what we've got is we're going to work through this example, and we're going to work through our advanced Dungeons and Dragons or advanced Dungeons and Dynamics 365 implementation. Now, why did I choose this? The main thing is that this is a very well documented set of information. There's a lot of books out there, there's a lot of rules, and also there's background information that you can pull on. So you're not really making a lot of things up. or you are making some things up, but you've got a good framework. So, for example, there's you've got the guides that you've got out there. So you've got Dungeon Master guides, like I've got here, my Dungeon Master guide. You've got player guides that you can work through, and you've got also something else that we'll talk about is we've got other source books. And for me, this is uh, all of the Dungeons and Dragons set in the realm of Faerun. So the Forgotten Realms source book that I've got here is pretty neat to use. And then also you can even go back and you can pull up older source guides so that we could get things like customers and vendors and organizations and all of these things. So it's very fun to sort of work through these. Now, if we, just to give you a little bit of an example, if we're going out here and if we're looking at our desktop that I've got here, then there's actually a lot of documentation that we can go out and take advantage of. And some of these that we're going to use are around this, are going to be around things like the currencies that we're going to have to set up, and I might have passed that, and also how you go out and sort of manage some of the transactions. So again, all of this is really well documented, and we can take advantage of this. So and also it's fun. So that's the main aim of trying to learn something, is to go out and have fun and work through it. Now, before we start going out and working through this, one of the big problems is how do you go out and get environments that you can learn dynamics with. And for some people, they can go out and they can fire up sandboxes and they can fire up environments, and those are the people that have money to burn. I'm cheap, so I had to find a better way that we could go out and manage this. And this is easily done for now, because what we've got is we've got a capability that we can actually download the current version of Dynamics and run it locally. This isn't something that you're going to run on just a normal PC. You need a little bit of memory around that, but the good thing is that we can go out and we can get into lifecycle services. Everyone should have access to lifecycle services. And then also what you can do is you can go out and create your own training environment. And once you've got this up and running, it's not costing you anything, and you can do this within the Hyper-V environment. So if we look at this within and go over to lifecycle services, so just as a little bit of a context, if you want to go out and get your own version of Dynamics, then you can go into lifecycle services, and what you can do is you can go into the shared asset library, and that's going to allow you to access a lot of the resources that are here. And then what we've got is we've got these VHD files that allow you to go out and download Dynamics and run them locally. Now, I won't go through the scenario of how to set these up. There's a lot of documentation that already talks about how to do that. But what we can do is, if we look at, for example, Hyper-V, then you can go out and you can create these environments and have as many of these that you want to run. You can see that I've got a lot here that I'm working on, but I'm only running one, which is the Waterdeep Trading Company, which we'll talk about in a second. And then when you do that, then what that's going to do is that's going to give you the ability to run your own version of Dynamics directly here through a virtual machine. so that you've got your own environment that you can run through. So this is really useful and also inexpensive to go out and do. So that's just a little bit of information around the setup. Now that we've got an environment up and running that we can go out and take advantage of, then we can start looking at this and do some fun things. Now, as you saw just before, I went out and I had the version of Dynamics up and running. Now, what I did is I went out and I tweaked a couple of things. So there were some customizations that I made with my limited coding skills that allowed me to do some more clever things. So I went out and I created just a little bit of code that allowed me to do some different things that aren't really standard in the system. So I had to go out and manage some of the languages and manage some of the currencies because the Dynamics didn't have some of the things that I wanted to use. This was an interesting project just by itself. So if we look at that, then for those of you that are faint of heart, this really isn't that big of a deal. And some of the things that I did, just to give you a bit of background, is that I went out and I used some examples that are out there on LinkedIn to go out and change the naming that I have here. So I actually went out and changed the name of Dynamics to Advanced Dungeons and Dynamics 365 so that I can see some of this information. Also, it's interesting that the Dynamics doesn't understand gold and silver and copper pieces. So in order to go and perform some of the other things that I wanted to do within the system, I had to go and add some ISO currency codes. Then also, another interesting thing, probably an oversight, is that the languages, there is no ISO language code for Faerun Common and Alvin and Dwarven, so I had to go out and set those up. So those were just some small changes that we needed to make. And as you can see, in this project, that's all I've got that I needed to maintain. But for a novice, this is interesting because this allows you to go out and maybe look at some of the development tasks that maybe you want to do. Also, other items that may be useful is the fact that if you want to go out and have maybe simplify down the system, not have as many countries, and maybe not having as many currency codes in the system, then a lot of those are system tables, and we had to go out, or I had to go out and remove those directly from the tables inside of the data model. I didn't do it in this example, but just as a heads up, you can also go out and use this to tweak some of the information. If you're inclined to code, then also you could create a script that goes and updates that manually. So that's a useful thing for us to do. So I went out and I performed a few customizations here. And now what that allowed me to do is that allowed me to go out and set up some other information. So we're going to work through some of these examples and see how these work within the system. And the first thing that I did is I went out and I set up some address localizations. And I found out a couple of interesting things as we went through there. So the thing with this example, because it's unique and it's non-standard, then we needed to go out, or we need to go out and create address information. We need to create a new country. We need to create some states that are in there, and then some cities, and also some districts, because of the way that the addresses within the D&D realm are set up. Then I decided to break this out into addresses And also, I had to invent zip codes or postal codes for the cities that we were using, because I needed to use that later on within the system to uh, to go out and do things like transportation management, which we'll look at later on, which is pretty fun to work with. So if we return back to Dynamics, then something that that people probably haven't done a lot is the address setup, because all of this is already predefined for us. We already have all of these address codes. So one of the things about setting up the system from scratch, and also from using something a little bit non-standard, is that we need to go out and we need to actually manage these. So what we do here is we go out and we can create our own address format. Most people haven't done that before. Then in this case, when we set up an address, then we're going to have a district that the address exists in, as well as the city and the state and the province. Also, what we can do here is, as we set this up, we'll learn things about how to format these addresses. So, for example, we could have the city and the state and then the zip code inside the addresses broken out here in the view. Now, also, if we go out, then we also need to set up a new country code. So we're going to set up one of the country codes here, but the good thing about if you wanted to expand out in this Dungeon and Dragon sort of theme that we have, then there's a lot more documented countries that we can set up with different regional contexts. So that's really interesting to do. Now, in addition to that, we've now got the states that we can set up, or the provinces. All of these are set up by default, but it gives us an interesting, or in the normal system, they're set up by default. So we're going to have to load these in ourselves. So we can go out and we can look at these. We can set up all of the different regions that we have here within the Faerun country, and define these. As we work through here, the interesting thing is also we can learn how to use the bulk import. We can pull in information through the Excel spreadsheets. Then we can expand this out, and we can have the cities that are based in our country. And then finally, we can go out and set up our districts. So these districts are broken out by city, and we can define these and expand out sort of our domain here within the view. Finally, something I found out after going out and setting things up, which is something you discover if you create something from the base up rather than being pre-fed a lot of the setups, is that in order to do any transportation, you need to have an address zip code or a postal code to get the movement from one location to another. So we had to invent or contrive some sort of postal code system that we can use in this Dungeon and Dragon sort of scenario. So what we've got really is modern Dungeons and Dragons that we can go out and maintain here. So there's a lot of different configurations that we can work through as we work through the address localizations. Now, the next thing, which is really interesting and fun to set up, is around the currencies. A lot of times we go out and we work in our local currency, and we don't think about other currencies, or if we do, then a lot of the things are set up. At most, what we're going to do is we're going to set up some exchange rates within the system. Now, the Dungeon and Dragon instance has coinage as the currency, and you've got multiple different denominations of the coin. So you've got gold pieces, silver pieces, copper pieces, electrum pieces, platinum pieces, and so forth. And then there's a conversion of those within the system. So something else that we needed to do is we needed to go out and set up the currency conversions, or in this case, the currencies, and then also set up the conversions. Now, we could also, if we want to, go out and set up some standard conversions to a global currency. So what we have with the Dungeon and Dragon rules are the coinage, but I want to go out and do trading, so I don't want to have to always be converting from silver pieces to copper pieces to gold pieces and so forth. So we also went out and set up the ability to have a standard dollar, or FSD. So that was something that we set up within the system. Now, so if we look at this, the currencies themselves, then what we've got is we've got all of these currencies that we've got set up in the system. Now, something that you can't do without the customization is you can't actually create currencies because they need to have an ISO code associated with them. So if I would go out and create a currency code here, then then we've got all of the standard currencies, and because of the extension that I made, then also we've got the platinum pieces, silver pieces, and so forth, and also the standard dollars that we've got set up here within the system. So again, the really interesting thing about going through this process is what are the things that we need to learn in order to use the system a little bit better. So I've got my currencies here, and then also what we have is we've got our currency conversions. So since we're using multiple currencies, the coinage as different currencies, then we're going to have standard conversions. The good thing is this is well documented. For example, if we look at a copper piece, then a copper piece is worth, or 50 copper pieces is worth 1 gold piece. Now, if we go out and use the current market based on inflation and based off the existing products so that we can get a rule of thumb, then if we have like a standard dollar, then one gold piece is actually worth 12.6 standard dollars. So rather than doing something like US dollars, which is a little bit regional, then we created the ability to use foreign standard dollars, which is something that we used later on within the currencies, so that we can have a standard reporting currency in the system. So the currency localization was something that we set up in the system. Now, also what we did is we set up language localizations. So within the system, we're going out and we could no longer have like English and Spanish and Portuguese and Russian and all of the different languages. We've got to have the languages or the dialects that we have within the system. Now, these aren't standard ISO languages yet. Maybe we can petition them to be added as languages, but it's something that we want to set up here within the view. And something that we'll see in just a second is that there's gaps here, problems that we need to solve, and I haven't solved them yet. And that is around the languages themselves. We can set up documents in these standard languages and based off the country and region, and we can use these against the employees. But some of them don't transfer over to some of the standard codes. And there's probably a design in that so that you only use specific ISO language codes. But it was interesting to do that. So if we go out and look at our language codes that we've got here, then we've got some of the standard languages here. We've got Elven, we've got Dwarven, we've got Gnome, halflingish. I don't know whether that's the correct term, and Orcish and so forth. But also we've got the common tongue, which is more of the standard language that's built into the system. Something that I was that if we look at this, and if we look at the preferences, then one of the things is some of these languages don't come over into the system settings, but they are set up when we go out and set up the customers. We can have standard language codes, and also we can have translations that are associated with them, which is a fun item there. So now that we've got this, we can go and we can start working on the company configuration itself. So what I'm doing, or in this example, my company is the Waterdeep Trading Company. And I use this because I wanted to have something that's versatile for the setup, that we can use for different methods, rather than having like a bakery or a tanner or something like that. Then the trading company can buy and sell goods, which is good, but also they can go out and they can fabricate goods. They can have discrete manufacturing. They can go out and become a distillery, so they can have process manufacturing, or they could have other sort of components in there. So what we can do is we can go out and create our company configurations and expand them out. Something, again, going back to the theme that we need to sort of break out of our comfort zone for some people. What we have to do is we have to go out and set up some additional information. For example, like a chart of accounts. Now, we don't want to go out and use the standard chart of accounts because those are Earth-based, and so they've got US dollars, they've got like Canadian dollars, Russian dollars, and so forth. And we want to set up some of that information ourselves. And also, what we want to do is create additional legal entities, which we'll look at in a second. So if we're here and we're looking at our main accounts, then as we set up these, we tweaked the chart of accounts, simplified it a little bit so that we don't have a lot of all the superfluous accounts right at the beginning, so that we can work out what's the base amount that we need in order to set up Dynamics. Do we need all these accrual accounts? If not, then let's set up a simplified chart of accounts. And also, we can create other banking accounts, for example, like coin on hand, which is tracking everything in gold pieces. And then we could have our banking accounts, or the cash on hand, or our operating accounts in dollars, which are going to be converted using the currency conversions that we've set up. By building this up from the base, we can really learn how the accounts work and how we can manage these. Now, if we look at our legal entities, then we can look at our legal entities that we have here. And I'll start off just with Waterdeep Trading Company. The interesting thing here is we can start bringing things together. So I can have the standard language that's associated with this account. I'm also going out and starting to use the localizations. So notice here that we've got the country. Some of these have zip codes. we've got the district that's popping up here, and then also we have the provinces for the Faroon country. So we're starting to see a lot of this information here. We can also go out and change some of the logos that we've got here. So I've got my logo for the opening of the main page, and also I've got my reporting logo, and then I can start tweaking this information and have the banking account information that's associated with our account configured here inside of the company itself. Now, something also that that I did, which I'll talk about later on as we get to sort of the what are we going to do next, is that we can also go out and we can create additional companies that are inside of this view. So this allows us to have very specific companies built out in the system. And also, just a spoiler, it also gives us the ability to go out and start thinking about gamification and competitive setups within the system, where, for example, we could have different organizations set up. Now, something that this allowed me to do is to go out and use the cross-company data sharing, something that we don't really set up a lot, and then start sharing information that we set up, for example, like the customer groups and so forth, and are moved from different companies within the system to others as they're set up. So this allows us to test how we can share like the item model groups and the delivery terms and the vendor groups and so forth between these organizations so that they're set up in one place. I thought that was an interesting exercise sort of as we went out and set through that. So we've got the company configuration. As we start learning more of the system, then we can start doing some other fun things. So we can start going out and setting up things like products. And let me go. And the products that we've got here allow us to set up bill of materials within the system and do a number of other things. So what I'm going to do is I can look at these and we can look at the released products that I've got set up in the system. And now we can start creating other information. So this gives us the ability to go out and start using images and being more creative with the setup as we sort of move through this. And also we can start creating product images along the way. Now, as we go out and create these, then we're also going to go out and use the units of measure in the system. As before, a lot of these things are standard, so we don't spend a lot of time creating units of measure unless we're creating very custom and specific unit of measures. But as we set up the Dungeon & Dragon, then we're going to create some other sort of units of measure here. So for example, I've got a league, which is the standard distance that a person can walk within one day, apparently. And then also I've got some other items here like bag and mile and so forth, and stone, which I think is 2.2 pounds, I believe, or something like that. And we can be more creative. We've also got attributes that we can use, for example, like strength and charisma and wisdom and so forth within the system that we can start using within human resources if we want to track, start tracking that information. But if I go back to my product, then also we've got all of these. If we look at the price of these, then we can see for the backpack, we can start seeing the costs that are associated with this, and we can also sort of change or work through some of these things from the ground up, like the costing model within the system and a lot of other things that we can manage. So as we sort of build up these, then we've got a lot of flexibility that we can go out and we can manage as we're sort of moving through these. So once we've got a company and we've got products to sell, and there's a lot more setup that we need to do. For example, there's a lot more inventory management that we're glossing over here in the presentation and in the essence of time. But we can start working with non-player characters. So non-player characters are going to be our customers and our vendors. Now, these are this is where we can start being creative in how we manage these characters, and also how we can bring them into the Dungeon and Dragons sort of scenario here within the system. So if I look, then we've got customers and we've got vendors that we've got here. Some of these customers and vendors I'm pulling from the source books that I've got, or if you want to, you can go out and you can use ChatGPT to go out and create your customer information as well. So if I look at all of my customers, then we can see that I've got some customers that I've got set up here. We can grab the different addresses or the addresses that we know of from the different locations, and also we can start assigning people to this from the customer management. Now, as we go out and expand these out, then we can also start looking at the contact information that we may have here and tweak it as well. If I look at all of my vendors, where in the customer case, we're using people for the customers. When I'm looking at the vendors and I'm going out and I'm using all of my guilds and so forth for a lot of my items, then I can go out and I can pull in other vendors, associating them with different services, and also having the Pharaoh numbering format that we've got here. And if I look at the blacksmiths that I may have here, then we can go out and have trade agreements that are associated with these, and we can say we can be more creative with, in this case, if I'm building a barrel, I've got a 530, 40 and 60 and 50 gallon barrel set up as product dimensions that I can go out and purchase. So we've got these non-player characters that we can go and maintain so that we can have some sort of interaction. Going back to the different company setups that we have here, also these vendors can be linked back to intercompany transactions. So in this case, if you want to set up gamification and if you want to have sharing of information, then in this case, I've got a board of trade, which is the sort of like the standard pricing mechanism for the region that I can go out and set up agreements through. And this, if I was gamifying this, then I'd have this managed by a game master that sets all the pricing, and then we can go out and we can start trading between the companies if we want to. So this is an interesting way that we can start learning how the intercompany trading works from an arm's length or an automatic transaction being created within the system. Now, on top of this, we can start being more playful and set up some other information. For example, if we wanted to do some manufacturing, some discrete or process manufacturing within the system, then we can go out and we can build a lot of information here. So I can go out and as I'm learning the system, I can use my bill of materials to go out and expand out on these items. So if, for example, I look at my Dynamics environment, and if I want to look at my bill of materials, then what we can go out and start modeling out our manufacturing within the system. So I've got here. I've got some. I've got a discrete sort of kit that I've got for an equipment pack, and then also we've got different versions of a bill of material. In this case, for going out and creating, in this case, a potion because it's Dungeons and Dragons, and we can look at all of these items. We can expand out on these items. I don't know whether I've got this, but we can also then price out these bill of materials so that we can see what the actual cost of these are within the system, so we can be a lot more creative as we're setting these up. This is for people that don't normally go into the production area. This is a really easy way to sort of ease into the production so that we can go and manage that ourselves. Now, as we're sort of building up these items, then we're getting more into we can start performing some of the transactional information. So the order management, this is where we can start creating orders. We can start managing them within the system. So if I go back to my my sales orders, then we can see that I've gone out and I've started creating some sales orders here. And we can look at all of these orders that we've got, and we can see all the products that we've got. We can start managing the product by inventories if we want to, and also if we want to go out and explore things like product categories and product classifications in the hierarchies, then we can manage that here as well. So in this case, we can learn how to start associating products to different product groups, and they're well documented. We know what product is adventuring gear, what product is artwork or armor or weapons or different construction items. So we can start fleshing out this information and work on this for quite a while within the system. Also, if we look at the items that we have, then we can start looking at the financial information. We can start playing around or managing things like ATP information as we expand out and build out sort of in this fun sort of way that we can manage our Dynamics implementation. So this is almost the end result, but we can go out and we can take a lot of the concepts that are within the Dungeon and Dragon sort of scenario and then have some more fun with them. We can go out and we can set up the warehouse management, we can set up transportation management and learn that. The hard thing about modules like transportation management is that there's a lot of intricacies in the real world on how we set these up. We don't need to worry about those necessarily within a training environment, and also we can create different scenarios. So say, for example, depending on how we want to ship these, then we can create different carriers, we can create different assignments that we can have here. And this item here was almost one of the things that started me on this on the process of setting up Dungeons and Dragons because I was actually interviewing for Microsoft, and my demonstration was on Dungeons and Dragons. So one of the things I did set up was the transportation management. So I thought I'd go out and do that and reopen that. And here we can go out and we can create different carrier methods. So, for example, we could ship by air, we could ship by different sea-based carriers. We can have ground carriers that we've got here as well, along with the templates. We can also go out and expand this out and look at different routes that we may have set up here. I don't have any set up, and then but also we can go out and create the rate engine configurations and also the rate management, so that if we want to look at our routes here, then we can go out and choose different customers that we've got, and then start routing and creating rates that are associated with this here within the system. So we're starting to have some purpose with how we want to set up this information. So this is the end of what we've sort of got time to show with the setup. But as I mentioned right at the beginning, this is something that I've been working on in my weekends for quite a while. And what I've got is anyone who wants to work through this, they can just go to adnd365.com/start, and there's all these guides that are there. We also have I've also got the base databases if you want to go out and manage these. But really, it's this is just the starting point for some of the things that we can do with setting up Dynamics and learning through the configuration of the system, regardless of whether this is going out and using this as Dynamics 365, or maybe using a real world example, like, for example, some of you all may have seen me setting up coffee information and going out and using it inside of more of a real world scenario. It's the same process, going out and setting things up from scratch so that you can learn the system. But later on or soon, I'm going to try to expand this out, and you may see some gamification options. And I talked about that before, where if you're going out and if you're doing training, then maybe it'll be even more fun, where you could go out and you could have the people that you're training compete against each other, so that they can go out and work either collaboratively or against each other, buying and selling items, turning the Dynamics implementation into more of a trading scenario in the system. And then, in order to do that, what I'm trying to do is I want to work out the mechanics of an economics engine, so that we can work out how much you should buy and sell things based off the supply and demand. But that's something that's coming on later on, and if anyone's interested and or has any ideas on that, then I'm all ears and would love to hear from you all. So again, just in summary, this was an overview of how you can go out and implement Dynamics for training in a less traditional manner, and have a little bit of fun around that and be a little bit more fluid. There's really no right and wrong way to implement if you're not constrained by real world country and localization information, like you'd have to be if you're working in like the US or in Spain or Mexico or Europe or wherever you may be working on. We can go out and we can sort of unshackle ourselves from that. If anyone has any questions about that, then I'm really easy to find on the web. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on a number of different places. Just contact me. I'd love to chat to anyone who wants to talk about this, especially around the training and documentation, which is one of my uh, one of my uh, things that I work on. So the to summarize, or really to end off this presentation, I'd like to thank the Dynamics user group and MS Dynamics World for hosting this presentation and allowing me to talk about this. And but the Dynamics user group and DynamicsCon are uh, anyone who wants to participate in the user group. Then these are great things to allow you to participate. I love the Dynamics user group. There's there's lots of great people and lots of sharing ideas that's being performed there. And anyone who wants to learn about dynamics and learn from other people like myself in different areas, then DynamicsCon is the premier um, online conference that you all can go and take advantage of it. I'm not quite sure whether it's online or in person this year, but talk to the user group if anyone has any questions about that. So with that said, I'm going to stop this presentation, and if and hopefully this was interesting to people and sparks some ideas and some interesting ways that maybe you can go out and learn dynamics and expand out your skills regardless of your knowledge level within dynamics. So thank you very much and have a great rest of your day or evening or morning, wherever your time zone is.